What up guys, this is Graveyard Golgotha, and before the video begins, I would like to give a big shout out to all the horror narrators that took the time to record, edit, and send me their videos for this collaboration. When you finish watching this video, be sure to check out all their channels and subscribe to them. We all work really hard to make sure that you guys have content to listen to on YouTube, and the horror community really appreciates all of you who take the time to listen to our channels. You guys are honestly the only reason we keep making content, but hopefully this is the first of many collaborations to come, and without further ado, let's begin. Number 1.
My wife, Anna, and I were very much in love years ago, but as fall follows summer and winter follows fall, that love had died. It had curdled and soured like witch's milk. It hadn't turned to hate exactly, but something milder and even worse. A chronic level of annoyance, perhaps. In any case, I was done with it. Done with her. We'd always loved sitting together outside, sipping a glass of wine or a beer as the sun set, even as our social calendar grew emptier and emptier, and as our bed grew cold and then colder still. We clung to this tradition. As we grew older and our careers took hold, my chances to spend time with Anna and the kids diminished, but I always tried to make time for our little ritual. The only thing that kept us from sitting out there on the patio and overlooking the lake was when Anna saw bees around. She was deathly allergic. We'd sit out there almost any time at all, even when the weather couldn't cooperate. In the early days, when things were easier, we'd cling together and laugh under the big, bright yellow market umbrella as storms whipped around us. In the later days, we'd still sit there as the rain fell or the sun streaked through the clouds, but we didn't laugh or even talk any longer. We just sat, drinking, her smoking her little French cigarettes, sipping a beer. And so it was that one sunny Thursday when I just couldn't take it anymore. I saw a little honeybee crawling on the table. I picked him up by his wings with the tiny forceps I had started carrying in my pocket and gently deposited him inside the can of beer Anna was drinking.
Number 2.
A slight bit of backstory here. Not sure if it matters, but at the time of the story, I was a 21-year-old female, about 5'3". I worked the evening shift and usually make it around 9:30 p.m. After leaving the parking lot of a job, I'd take an immediate left into a light, about 300 feet up the road to get home. On this particular night, everything seemed normal as I pulled up to a red light in the left-hand turn lane. This intersection is a block away from a very large university, so it is usually pretty busy. This night was no different. I wasn't the only car waiting at the light. We had 2 turn lanes as there was a car directly to my right as I also waiting for the light. As this light tends to be a particular long one, I began browsing through the various apps on my phone. I suddenly hear a familiar sound on the rear passenger side of my car, the little thump sound when someone pulls a handle of the door. I immediately whip my head around to see a man peer into my window, still attempting to open my locked door, with a wide grin on his face. He appeared to be in his mid-late 30s, was balding, was wearing a tattered wife-beater tank top. His teeth were cracked and yellowed, apparently from drug use. I immediately stomp on the accelerator and run the red light. I see him in the rearview mirror, standing there, staring after my car. I called my best friend, who I also happened to work with. She was working a night shift. I told her to inform my supervisor. The supervisor called the police, who ended up contacting me for a statement. I described the man best I could, but I only could see him for a few seconds and never heard back, so I'm assuming he was never found. After this, I never leave work without walking out with it whenever he ever goes. I'm so grateful that my car doors automatically lock when I put my car in drive, otherwise he might have gotten in. The thing is, that still bothers me, is that I know there was another car right next to me. You have to see what was happening. Maybe even saw a guy walking up, but no attempt to help was made.
Number 3.
I learned a long time ago that it's not safe to do anything but drive on the road anymore. You can't flash people, you can't tailgate people, and you definitely can't pass people. Because everyone is angry these days. I'm a 17-year-old girl, and this is the story of why I stay off the highway whenever, and if ever, I can help it. My whole life, my mother would tell me to stay off the freeway. People are crazy, she'd always tell me, but I never had context until a few weeks ago. I was driving home from my job at the mall, probably somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock at night. There were plenty of people on the highway, and the sun had just passed over the horizon. I had a few miles to go before I got off the highway, and even though I had been driving for a year now, I was still uncomfortable on the highway, especially at night. I just wanted to go home. As I was coming up on my exit, I went to pass a beat-up Oldsmobile that was puttering along in the right lane about 30 miles under the speed limit. I had to swerve to avoid it. I came up on it so fast. As I passed it, it flicked its high beams on and started to speed up. I thought at first maybe it was an undercover cop and he had just got a call. But my gut said otherwise. And instead, the car accelerated until it was driving alongside me. I looked over to see the outline of a large man sitting in the driver's seat. His head was turned my way. I sped up to pass him, and as I pulled over in front of him, he pulled into the lane I had just come from. I was scared, and thankful that my exit was up in less than a mile. I put the hammer down, just trying to get to the exit. In my side mirror, I could see the boxy, tan-colored Oldsmobile accelerating in the left lane. He was coming up alongside me again, even with my foot down. My speedometer read 85 miles an hour as a sign from my exit came into view. I flicked my blinker on and immediately regretted it. The car slowed down and moved into my lane behind me. I watched him in my rearview and he too put his blinker on. I was panicking. This guy's going to follow me home. I had to do something. I had a few hundred feet. I moved into the lane, making it appear as if I was about to get off. With my blinker on, I waited until the road started to turn sharply off before I jerked my car back onto the highway. I could tell he wanted to follow me because I saw him try to turn his wheel. I barely missed the barricade when I turned. He would have hit it. I stayed on the highway until the next exit and backtracked until I made it back into my own town and to my house. At the light before my house, I swear I saw the same tan junker pass through the lights, but I raced home after that and still am not sure. Regardless, I have no idea what that guy would have done if he followed me home. No one else was there except for my cat. I hate to think what would have happened to me. I just know better now than to bother anyone on the road. People are crazy.
Number 4.
Jack was nimble, Jack was quick, but Jack didn't realize the floor was so slick. Jack's right leg went one way, his left went another, as he slipped and he slid in the blood of his mother. He screamed and he cried as the kids tend to do, but scrambled up quickly as the shadow behind grew. Jack jumped to his feet, he ran to the door, but was snagged by his shirt tail. Then Jack fought no more. Jack's father was crying. As Jack's eyes grew wide, he squeezed and he squeezed till the light in Jack died. I tried telling you, honey, the man said with a grin. I won't let you leave me. Divorce is a sin. As the cops cuffed him tightly, he lamented his loss. As they led him away, he was still clutching his cross.
Number 5.
This event took place during October of 2015. I was with my journalism group for a Halloween video project. We decided to take ourselves to the most haunted places in our area and film some stuff. You know, trying to be the local ghost hunters of our town to entertain fellow classmates. Anyway, the locations we went to were the haunted forest where people go to commit suicide, the building called Hell House where Satanists go to perform rituals, Crybaby Bridge where they say a woman killed her baby, and finally, Hook's Tomb, where you perform a number of things on a certain tombstone and you smell roses. The group was small, about 5 people in total, so we only took one vehicle. Our first stop was at the Suicide Forest. It was about 7 o'clock at night and the atmosphere alone was enough to freak us out. But even though we were scared, we made our way in by climbing the chain-link fence. The forest was cut off by the public and has been for years. On the fence was a sign that read, "Someone out there loves you. Suicide is not the answer," and it had the suicide hotline underneath it. We got about half a mile into the woods before we stopped and started to film. I was the spokesperson for this location, so I had to do all the talking while in this area. The camera was set up and I stood in front of it. I had this uneasy feeling that someone was watching us record for our video. Even though I had this feeling, I didn't tell anybody and signaled Katie to press the record button. This is Suicide Forest, located in the farthest part of Arrow Lake. Back in 1987, over 20 people entered this forest and ended their lives together. Their bodies were located so deep in the woods that it took days until a group of teenagers found them hanging from the trees. It is said that this forest is now haunted by the souls that died there. The atmosphere alone can send chills down a person's spine. Our next location is to... I stopped talking when I heard rustling in the bushes behind me. I knew it was no one from our group because they were all behind the camera. They stared in horror behind me, and Katie picked up the camera after screaming, "Run." I didn't question it. I took off as fast as I could towards the exit. We got to the fence and quickly climbed it. I jumped off the top of the fence and rolled across the gravel, jumping back up to my feet. I didn't bother to look back and see if anything was chasing us. At this point, I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there. I climbed into the vehicle and called for the others to get in quickly so we could get out of there. As we sped off in a panic, I looked back towards the lot our car had been in. In the lot, I saw a red truck in the far corner, hidden by the darkness. I spoke up quietly to inform the others. "Guys, there was a red truck in the parking lot. Do you think whoever was in that truck was messing with us?" "What kind of person would be willing to walk into the woods just to mess with some kids, Sam?" Shannon asked from the driver's seat. "Oh, I don't know. A security guard trying to scare us away?" The others agreed with me and we decided to keep going and finish our video. We made it to Hell House and Crybaby Bridge without something going wrong. We took pictures in the locations and caught some orbs. At Crybaby Bridge, we put baby powder on the hood of our vehicle, shut the car off, and in unison said, "We have your baby." What was supposed to happen was for baby footprints to appear in the powder. A baby was supposed to cry, which was really just the mountain lions that live near the bridge, and our car was supposed to not start and the doors locked so we couldn't get back inside. Instead, we caught the mountain lion cries and the car wouldn't start. There were no footprints and the doors never locked. Anyway, when we got to the last location, Katie stood in front of the mausoleum and I pressed play. This tomb has a legend behind it. Tonight, we will be demonstrating what to do in order to smell the sweet scent of roses. Just don't jump up and down on the tomb. You can ask Sam's dad what happens if you do," Katie said with a smirk thrown my way. We demonstrated what to do, and the legend was true. A sweet scent of roses filled the air, which caused us to freak out and burst into a fit of happiness. As we made our way back to the car, there was a note taped to the windshield. "I'm coming for you soon." As the note was getting passed around for everyone to read, I saw the red truck slowly drive past the cemetery. The driver was unrecognizable, half covered by the darkness. We quickly got in the car and sped off the opposite direction. Later that night, we were talking in the group chat made for the video and decided to pull the video from ever being seen. On occasion, the red truck would be seen by someone within the group. I tried catching his license plate, but the car was bare. No plates whatsoever. It got to the point where we had to tell the police. The man seemed to disappear after a few weeks of stalking. It's been about 2 years, but I still fear for our safety. I carry a knife with me everywhere I go, just in case.
Number 6.
The lies our parents tell us. Every parent lies, whether driven by fear, impulse, or shame. Some are innocent, like Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. Others can be far more sinister. The abusive, drunken father who tells his children it's all for the best. My parents lied about everything. They told me they worked. They didn't. They told me they were Cherokee. They weren't. They told me that they'd come to my games. They never did. They told me they'd stop using drugs. They never even tried. They told me they loved me. They never did. I was an unloved foster child, adopted purely out of self-interest and greed. Monthly payments from the state were funneled directly into booze, drugs, and cigarettes. What was left was used to keep me barely fed and clothed. When teachers called home to ask about the bruises on my body, my parents would lie and blame sports. Sports was a great cover for them. At parent-teacher conferences, they displayed overt affection and lavished me with attention, only to scream at me for minor mistakes on the car ride home. They truly had mastered the art of deceit, a feat that required sociopathic tendencies. Drug-fueled parties were a regular occurrence at my home. Meth heads, tweakers, addicts, junkies, and criminals. They were the kind of people my parents associated with. I was always forced to clean up the aftermath, a swift beating and punishment for disobeying or moving too slow. While beating me, my mother would lie and say they were doing it to build character. I'm pretty sure they enjoyed causing pain to others, or at least making others as miserable as they are. Years passed by, and things only became worse. Their drug habit intensified, leading to increasingly erratic behavior. I was forced to commit petty crimes to support their habit, usually shoplifting, or even purse snatching. When the police arrested me, my parents lied and passionately stated how they raised me to do right. Like every other time, falsehoods were taken as a fact. I remained in their custody. Despite the suffering, I never tried to leave. I never told a soul what I endured. I wanted nothing more than to see my parents change, to do good for once in their lives. Change does not occur overnight, so I remain patient. But everyone has a limit. After 12 years, I could wait no longer. Every attempt to better their lives, to improve their character, had been met with resistance and abuse. Subtle and direct suggestions were cast aside like an unwanted pet. And if anything, their behavior only worsened over time. Martha and John Greenlee were officially a failed experiment. I would proceed no further. You see, I also lied about my parents, constantly. I was the true master of manipulation and deceit, refined over centuries of practice. I told my parents I was a child. I was not. I told them I felt pain. I hadn't for years. I told them I cared. I did not. I told them I loved them. I never did. Eternity can become quite boring, so you have to be creative to keep life interesting. My personal preference was to engage in various experiments, mainly focused on changed and fundamental characters of human beings. Rarely was I successful. When the police came and found my parents with their throats slashed, I lied and said it was a drug deal gone bad. When they asked how I was feeling, I lied and said my heart ached. When they took me to the police station, I lied and said I needed to use the restroom. When I reached the bus terminal, I lied and said my name was John Anderson from Evanston. And so I was.
Number 7.
This is a true story that took place in Sweden in November of 1741. This comes from the public court records. When Queen Ulrica was dead, her corpse was placed in the usual way in an open coffin in a room hung with black and lighted with numerous wax candles. A company of the king's guard did duty in the anteroom. One afternoon, the carriage of Countess Steenbach, First Lady of the Palace and a particular favorite of the Queen's, drove up from Stockholm. The officers commanding the guard of honor went to meet the Countess and conducted her from the carriage to the door of the room where the dead Queen lay, which she closed after her. The long stay of the lady in the death chamber caused some uneasiness, but it was ascribed to the vehemence of her grief, and the officers on duty, fearful of disturbing the further effusions of it by their presence, left her alone with the corpse. At length, finding that she did not return, they began to apprehend that some accident had befallen her, and the captain of the guard opened the door. He instantly started back with a face of utmost dismay. The other officers ran up and plainly perceived, through the half-open door, the deceased queen standing upright in her coffin and ardently embracing the countess. The apparition seemed to move, and soon after became enveloped in a dense smoke or vapor. When this had cleared away, the body of the queen lay in the same position as before, but the countess was nowhere to be found. In vain did they search that and the adjoining apartments, while some of the party hastened to the door, thinking she must have passed unobserved to her carriage. But neither carriage, horses, driver, or footman were to be seen. A messenger was quickly dispatched with a statement of this extraordinary circumstances to Stockholm, and there he learned that the Countess Steinbach had never quitted the capital, and she had died the very moment when she was seen in the arms of the deceased queen.
Number 8. When I was in my first year of college, I lived with my mom. We lived by ourselves. My dad had passed the year before, and we moved out of the house shortly after. I was glad we had moved because I had suffered a lot from paranormal trauma growing up there, and was glad to get out. One night, I was driving home on Highway 111 North after youth group, and I saw something that still bewilders me to this day. It was lightly raining that night. Mist crawled across the road from the cow fields on either side. The lights from the few gas stations nearby were reflected in the wet asphalt. I was driving about 3 car lengths behind a dark minivan, with nobody else in sight on the roads. All of a sudden, I saw the van swerve to miss something in the middle of the road. I was going too fast and the road was too slick to miss it. All of a sudden, I saw framed in my headlights and silhouetted in the glowing red brake lights of the van speeding away, a tall, muscular man with the upper shoulders and head of a buck. It was like a minotaur, but a deer head instead of a bull, and glowing red eyes. I clenched and braced for impact, and then passed right through the figure. It was like it dissolved right into the mist. I am used to swerving to miss deer at night, but I should have nailed this thing on the driver's side. But nothing. I was too afraid to look into the rearview mirror as I gassed it and sped home. I was only a couple of miles away, which was both comforting and terrifying at the same time. I raced into the door and locked it behind me. I told my mom, who laughed it off, but was disconcerted at my pale, clammy complexion. I only later found in research A being described like what I saw. The Wendigo. A Native American legend that was terrifying me as a child, but I had never heard it described like this. I had never heard of any creature like this until that night on a dark highway at 111 that I will never forget. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, be sure to like it, leave a comment, and subscribe to become a member of the Underground today. Also, I will soon be needing content for my channel, so if you have a scary story, paranormal experience, or something you just can't explain, send it to my email, and I will be sure to post it on this channel. My email will be found in the description below. Just make sure that you have all grammatical errors taken care of, and leave out any names that you don't want mentioned in the story. I would like to keep this channel as original as possible, but I need your help. But all that aside, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.